Deborah Fragomeni, having first been duly sworn remotely via Zoom video conference, was examined and testified on her oath as follows. Examination. Ms. Gordon, would you, please, good morning. Would you please state your full name and home address for the record? Fragomeni. Yes, my name is Debbie Fragomeni. My address is redacted. Gordon. Ms. Fragomeni, where are you employed today? Fragomeni. Rochester Community Schools. Gordon. How long have you been an employee of Rochester Community Schools? Fragomeni. 33 years. Gordon. What is your current title? Fragomeni. Deputy Superintendent, Teaching and Learning. Gordon. Are there other deputy superintendents? Fragomeni. Yes, there's a deputy superintendent of business and finance. Gordon. Who is that? Fragomeni. Dana Taylor. Gordon. She has business and finance? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And you have teaching and learning? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Who do you report to? Fragomeni. I report to Dr. Shaner. Gordon. For how long have you been reporting directly to Dr. Shaner? Fragomeni. 9 years. Gordon. When did you become deputy superintendent? Fragomeni. 9 years ago. Gordon. So this is 2021. Give me the year that would be. Fragomeni. 2012. Gordon. Okay, and what were you doing prior to that time at the district? Fragomeni. I was the executive director of elementary education. Gordon. Who did you report to in that role? Fragomeni. I reported to the superintendent at the time. Gordon. Who was that? Fragomeni. We were in transition, so Tressa Zumsteg was the acting interim superintendent during that time period. Gordon. How long were you in that role? Fragomeni. I was in that role for a year and a half. Gordon. And what were you doing prior to that time? Fragomeni. I was a building administrator, building principal at Hugger Elementary for 12 years. Gordon. How many elementary schools are there in the district? Fragomeni. 13. Gordon. And I'm sorry, you were building principal, did you say, for 13 years? Fragomeni. 12 years. Gordon. I'm sorry, 12 years, okay. Fragomeni. That's okay. Gordon. And prior to that, what were you doing for the district? Fragomeni. I was a learning consultant at several elementary buildings. Gordon. And did you have any other titles that we have not yet covered? Fragomeni. I was a classroom teacher when I started my career in the district. Gordon. And when was that? Fragomeni. That began in 1989. Gordon. What materials have you reviewed to sort of refresh your memory or take a look at what's been happening in the case? Fragomeni. I received the subpoena and I have reviewed that document. Gordon. Have you reviewed any other documents? Fragomeni. No, I have not. Gordon. You have not reviewed Marty Blake's deposition transcript? Fragomeni. No, I have not. I didn't even know it was available. I have not. Gordon. Okay. And have you been asked to produce any documents in this case in response to the plaintiff's various requests for documents and information? Fragomeni. No, I have not. Nichols. Wait. Hold on, I'm going to object to anything that's attorney-client privileged. So outside of any communications that could have been coming from an attorney. Gordon. I'm allowed to ask her if she's been asked to produce anything. Nichols. Okay. Well, I just want to be very careful as it reflects to the scope of the privilege. Debbie, do not discuss anything that you and I have discussed or that you and an attorney for the district has discussed. Gordon. I didn't ask you that, but your attorney is just letting you know not to discuss personal, conversations with her. Leaving that aside, I don't know if I got my complete answer. I think you just told me you have not been asked to produce any documents or communications in this case in response to requests from my firm and my client, is that correct? Fragomeni. That is correct. Gordon. You have not been asked to look through your emails for any communications you might have with regard to this matter, is that correct? Fragomeni. That is correct. Gordon. You have not been asked to look for any text messages you may have that would regard this matter, is that correct? Fragomeni. That is correct. Gordon. Do you know whether anybody else has accessed, anybody from the district, your email account to see whether or not there are any documents that should be produced in this case? Fragomeni. I have no knowledge of any documents being reviewed. Gordon. Okay. And you have no knowledge of anybody looking at your computer or your server that you're connected to with regard to your personal, or, not your personal, but your emails and communications, is that correct? Fragomeni. That is correct. Gordon. Okay. Give me an overview of your job duties. First of all, is there a job description? Fragomeni. Yes, there is a job description. I oversee daily operations of our organization, serving 15,000 students. I have all responsibility to instruction and the development of professional curriculum and professional development training for our staff and for our students. Gordon. What is your pay at the district at this time? Fragomeni. My pay at the district at this time is $156,000. Gordon. And tell us, what is your job description? I mean, you've given a big picture overview, but what are your duties? What are your duties? Fragomeni. My duties are at length. I oversee 8 directors who have specific subsets of our instruction: elementary, secondary, special populations, technology, RL special population, special education services. Those are the components that I oversee, along with professional development training. Gordon. What are, Fragomeni, for our staff members? Pardon? Gordon. What are the titles of the directors that report to you? Fragomeni. 2 of the directors that report to me are executive, are assistant superintendents for special populations. Gordon. And let me take a pause. Who are those people? Fragomeni. Conchetta Lewis. Ms. Conchetta Lewis is the assistant superintendent of special populations, equity, diversity and inclusion. Gordon. Okay. Who else reports directly to you? Fragomeni. Assistant superintendent of pre-K, early childhood education, Mr. Corey Heitch. Gordon. Go ahead, who else? Fragomeni. Mr. Neil DeLuca is the executive director of secondary education. Gordon. Who else? Fragomeni. Ms. Karen Gelardi is executive director of grants, professional development and Title X programming. Gordon. Who else? Fragomeni. Cindy Lindner is the executive director of technology, infrastructure and special projects. Gordon. Anyone else? Fragomeni. I believe that's all. Gordon. What is your educational background? Fragomeni. I have a graduate program from Bowling Green State University. I have a master's degree from Michigan State and Saginaw Valley. I have a specialist programming from Oakland University. Gordon. What's your master's in? Fragomeni. Early childhood education. Gordon. And what's you said you have a certificate? Fragomeni. Yes, Central Office Administration. Gordon. How long was that program? Fragomeni. 2 years. Gordon. When did you first meet Sandra Blake? Fragomeni. Sandra Blake and I met when we were both teaching at Musson Elementary in the early 1990s. Gordon. Okay, so you were both elementary school teachers in the same building? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and you became friends, as I understand it, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and you've remained friends since the 1990s, is that correct? Fragomeni. That is correct. Gordon. Okay, and you socialize with one another, is that correct? Fragomeni. Professionally we socialize with one another. Gordon. Do you socialize outside of a professional context? Fragomeni. No, I do not. Gordon. Do you text with her? Fragomeni. No, I do not. Gordon. You have her number in your phone, correct? Fragomeni. I do not. Gordon. How is it you called her on November 5th? Fragomeni. I contacted, Gordon. Go ahead. Fragomeni. Please ask again. Gordon. Yeah, how is it you have her phone number, is that correct? Fragomeni. I did not have her phone number on November 5th. Gordon. Where did you get it? Fragomeni. I contacted her daughter and asked if she could please have her mother call me. Gordon. Okay, and when did you become friends with Sandra Blake's daughter, Andrea Blake? Fragomeni. Andrea was Sandy's daughter, knew her for the 12 years I taught with Sandy. Andrea was a student teacher in my building at Hugger Elementary and was later hired as a teacher in our district, so I had known her since she was a student teacher at my building. Gordon. Are you the number 2 person in the district on the administration side? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay. Do teachers report up to you? Fragomeni. Can you clarify that question? Gordon. Who do the principals report to? The school building principals. Fragomeni. Thank you. The building principals report to the Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education and the Executive Director of Secondary Education. Gordon. Who report up to you, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, so you are in the chain of command of the teachers in the district, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Is Sandra Blake working for the district at this time? Fragomeni. No, she is not. Gordon. Okay, so you contacted Andrea Blake to obtain her phone number, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct, or ask her to call me. Gordon. Okay, and do you text with Andrea Blake? Fragomeni. No, I do not. Gordon. Do you have a friendship with her, as well? Fragomeni. I have a professional relationship with her, as well. Gordon. Did you fill in for Superintendent Shane when he was on a leave of absence? Shaner. Fragomeni. When Dr. Shaner, Gordon, I apologize. Yeah. Fragomeni. When Dr. Shaner was on leave of absence, yes, I did step in. Gordon. When was that? Fragomeni. When we returned to school in January, the first week of January. Gordon. What year? Fragomeni. 2021. Gordon. So you're saying in January 2021 you stepped into, because he was on a leave of absence, is that what you're saying? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. That would have been after the new year? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and then for how long were you filling in for Dr. Shaner when he was out on a leave of absence? Fragomeni. Dr. Shaner was on the leave of absence through April of 2021. Gordon. What part of April? Fragomeni. Mid-April. Gordon. When did Rochester Public Schools go to, and I may not be using the right terminology here, I'll call it remote learning, but you'll tell me how you refer to it. Fragomeni. We went to remote learning on March 11, 2020. Gordon. And when did remote strike that? Did you use remote learning 100% of the time beginning on March 11, 2020? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And that lasted until when? Fragomeni. Until the end of the school year. Gordon. So I'm sorry, I don't know when that was, so can you help me out? Fragomeni. It would be June, second week of June 2020. Gordon. Okay, and then school was out for the summer, is that correct? Fragomeni. That would be correct. Gordon. And then students returned in, when in 2020? Fragomeni. August of 2020, late August. Gordon. And what was the status of remote learning in August, late August 2020? Fragomeni. Remote learning had transitioned for our students to virtual option or in person for our families. Gordon. Okay, and and how long did that last? Fragomeni. That lasted approximately through I do not recall. I can guesstimate it was in the fall, maybe early November. Gordon. Fall of when? 2020? Fragomeni. 2020, yes. Gordon. Whose decision was it to go to remote learning on or around March 11, 2020? Fragomeni. The decision was based on the data working with the Oakland County Health Department and recommendations from our collaborative Oakland Schools team. Gordon. Okay, whose decision was it? Fragomeni. It would be Dr. Shaner's. Gordon. In consultation with yourself? Fragomeni. In consultation with the Board of Education. Gordon. And you, I assume, as being the head of the educational curriculum, would have played a role in that, correct? Fragomeni. I did play a role, but I didn't play a role in the decision, the final decision. Gordon. You gave your input, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and when you went to remote or the virtual, I'm sorry, when you went to a virtual option, was that the same thing as remote or is virtual different? Fragomeni. Virtual is different. Gordon. What is it? Fragomeni. Virtual is where students are online, their schedules are adjusted in a different manner. It is completely at home learning. It's not coming into the building for any type of instruction. Gordon. And what is remote learning? Fragomeni. Remote learning is being at home under circumstances that students cannot be in the building. They are meeting with their regular classroom teachers and following that schedule that they had previously held. Gordon. So there are virtual classrooms, Fragomeni, Gordon. In lieu of live classrooms? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Under the remote learning concept? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And how often does the board meet in 2020? Fragomeni. The Board of Education meets. I'm not a board member, but the board has 2 meetings a month. They have a Board of Education meeting, community meeting, and they also have a Board of Education work session, topics that are timely to the district. Gordon. You attend all those meetings, don't you? Fragomeni. Yes, I do. Gordon. And when you went to, all right. So let me just understand this. I want to be really clear on the dates. You were in remote from March through the end of the school year? Fragomeni. Gordon. And then you transitioned to either remote or virtual, do I have that right? Fragomeni. Parents had the option, yes. Gordon. So when the students returned in August 2020 there were no live classroom sessions, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, when did students return to the classroom? Fragomeni. The last week of August. Gordon. What year? Fragomeni. 2020. 2020. Gordon. Okay, when did you become aware of this lawsuit? Fragomeni. January of 21. Gordon. Did you read the lawsuit at the time? Fragomeni. I saw it on the news. Gordon. Okay, and what happened within the district when the lawsuit was in the news and/or people became aware of the lawsuit? For example, was there a board meeting discussing the lawsuit? Fragomeni. Not at all. Gordon. Did you discuss it with Dr. Shaner? Fragomeni. After the death of his son, when it was going to be reported further in the news, I did share the information with him at that time. Gordon. He didn't already know? Fragomeni. I don't know. Gordon. How often do you, during 2020 and in 2021 do you meet with Dr. Shaner, other than the time he was on a leave of absence? Fragomeni. I speak to him daily, I collaborate, I'm in conversations with him. During the death of his son, from the minute that it happened to his son I talked to him every single day. Gordon. Well, leaving that period aside, you talk to him every day, it sounds like, correct? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. Several times a day potentially, right? Fragomeni. Potentially, yes. Gordon. Okay, who is Amy Decrease? Fragomeni. She is in the curricula, or, in the communications department. She serves as an assistant to our Executive Director of Strategic Communications, Mrs. Lori Grain. Gordon. Okay, and what is the role of Strategic Communications? Fragomeni. Strategic Communications is as we are working on marketing our brand, working on our strategic plan, she does the promotion of that work. She also showcases the spotlights of key points of student instruction, along with athletic successes. So she showcases Rochester Community Schools and supports communications with our Executive Director. Gordon. Did she have a job description, Ms. Decrease? Fragomeni. Yes, she does. Gordon. Or Lori Grain. Fragomeni. Yes, she does. Both of them do. Gordon. Okay, so they are to promote your product, to do marketing and to educate people as to the programming and so on that's going on within the school district? Fragomeni. That is correct. Their job descriptions are expanded, as well, to helping write communications to the district when there is urgent information that the community needs to know. For example, last week we sent out 5 communications when we were in the middle of a lockdown situation. So they are responsive to what's happening in the district daily, hourly, and the celebratory piece is the additional piece of the work that they do. I don't have access to their job descriptions but we can make them available. Gordon. Okay, good. We will be asking for those. And Lori Grain reports to who? Fragomeni. Dr. Shaner. Gordon. Okay, Fragomeni. And myself. Gordon. Okay, so to you and then up to Dr. Shaner, is that accurate? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and how about Amy Decrease? Fragomeni. She reports to Lori Grain. Gordon. So she's in your chain of command, as well, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Got it. Christina Whitmore, what is her job? Fragomeni. Her job is executive assistant directly to Dr. Shaner. Gordon. Do you have any working relationship with her? Fragomeni. I do. Gordon. And what is that? Fragomeni. In support of Dr. Shaner, and during his absence she was a support to myself. She is the connection to ensure that the district has timely, accurate information. And she also is the liaison for communications to the Board of Education. Gordon. How long have you known Kristen Bull? Fragomeni. I have known Kristen Bull as she's been a Board of Education member. I do not know the time frame that she has been. Gordon. Did you know her prior to her becoming a board member? Fragomeni. I knew her as a community member who was a reporter in the area, but I didn't know her personally at that time. Gordon. What do you mean by reporter? Fragomeni. She was a reporter for a local Rochester Post magazine. I don't know any further information, but I would see her at events reporting on those events. Gordon. And how do you communicate with the board members, when you have information to share and so on? Fragomeni. Can you describe that a little further and I'm happy to answer. Gordon. Sure, everybody eventually reports up to the board of directors, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Gordon. Did the board of directors approve? Were they involved in the decision to put you in your current position? Fragomeni. To step in for Dr. Shaner in January? Gordon. No, your role as deputy superintendent. Fragomeni. They did approve that as part of our process for hiring and approval, yes. Gordon. Who reviews your performance? Fragomeni. Dr. Shaner and the Board of Education. Gordon. Okay, so you do report up to the board? Fragomeni. Yes? Fragomeni. Dr. Shaner reports directly to the board. I report to Dr. Shaner. Gordon. I know that, but you have to communicate with the board with regard to your area of responsibility, which is a very important one, correct? Fragomeni. It is a very important one, and Dr. Shaner and I both share that role. Dr. Shaner is the primary person. I took more responsibility to talk with the board while Dr. Shaner has been on leave. Gordon. Okay. But in any event, you do communicate with board members with regard to your role as deputy superintendent, correct, from time to time? Fragomeni. From time to that is true. Gordon. And how do you do that? By email? Fragomeni. I do not, I do it by phone call or we have committee meetings with Board of Education members each month, the policy community message. And I will meet with those 3 representatives to talk about district instructional programming, curriculum, additions, those types of things, on a monthly basis. Court reporter. Ms. Denverno left the deposition. Gordon. Okay, and who are the people on that committee? Fragomeni. The people that have been on that committee this previous year, 3 board members, Kevin Beers, Barb Annis and Michelle Buelltel. Court reporter. Ms. Denverno entered the deposition. Gordon. You said you went to remote learning on March 11, 2020. Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And you began to get feedback from parents, is that accurate? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and you got negative feedback in part, is that correct? Fragomeni. Not in March of 2020, no. Gordon. When did you begin to get negative feedback? Fragomeni. I believe it's Gordon, and by you of course I mean the district. Fragomeni. Correct. I believe that the concern became when it became more of a reality, probably in April, that we were not going to be going back and it was impacting end-of-the-year activities. Gordon. And in what format did you obtain feedback from the parents? Fragomeni. A variety. We used a system called Talk to Us, which is programming system that sends parents' concerns forward that we do respond to or have our building administration follow up. We use OK to Say for the mental wellness of students. There's a Board of Education website where parents can directly contact board members and also from phone conferences with parents directly that reached out. Gordon. Any other way? Fragomeni. Not to my knowledge. Gordon. What about board meetings? Fragomeni. I'm sorry, we had monthly board meetings where we were also giving the emergency data each month of the status of COVID in our schools and our protocols to keep kids safe. Gordon. Well, did you get feedback from parents at board meetings with regard to their opinions on the remote learning? Fragomeni. Absolutely, yes. Gordon. Okay, who is responsible within the district for I'll use the word tracking, but, staying abreast of what the feedback was that the district was getting pro and con on the decision that had been made to go to remote learning? Fragomeni. We compile that information as it comes in, and I don't know who was recording all of that information. I know our communications department does keep a pulse on what would be necessary. But the feedback that was coming in was very, very consistent and very much aligned with what we were finding at the county and the state level at the time. Gordon. And what was that? Fragomeni. That our community felt very divided in terms of staying in person or returning in person or staying remote. Gordon. And who was sort of trying to monitor or keep a handle on the feedback you were getting? Whose responsibility was that? Fragomeni. I believe that information. I would not be able to speak to who the original person was. I believe we talked about that at our daily COVID update meetings. We talked about what was happening. Please understand at that time there was a lot of different variables that were taking place. We were focused firstly on the safety and the well-being of the impact that COVID was having in our community and the social-emotional well-being of our students, so our priority was on those components. And, Gordon. So, go ahead. Fragomeni. Any family that was reaching out that their child was suffering in any shape or form, we have a building team that has counselors, social workers and the building administration to be doing some well checks at that time. Gordon. Okay, that really wasn't what I was interested in, though. I just wanted to know who was monitoring the feedback that was being given to you with regard to the school community being in favor of or against remote learning. Fragomeni. It would be the communications department that were keeping us apprised of that information. Gordon. So that would be Amy Decrease and Lauren Grain, or is it? Fragomeni. It would be Lori Grain. Gordon. Lori, I'm sorry. So Lori would have been the one that was responsible for that, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct, Gordon. Who assigned, strike that. There was a parent Facebook meeting, a Facebook group that was formed at some point, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. What was the name of that group? Fragomeni. I do not recall. There were several. Gordon. Well, tell me the ones you recall. Fragomeni. I don't recall. The one that I don't recall the specific name of them. I know there were several of them. Gordon. Okay, well, tell me what the several, describe them, if you would, then. Fragomeni. Concerned Parents of Rochester would be the one that I would recall. Gordon. How about RCS Parents for In-Person Education? Fragomeni. I'm aware of that, but I do not have information about that site. Gordon. So you've heard of it? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And you've heard of RSC, sick, parents, you've heard of concerned parents, and these are closed Facebook groups, as I understand it. Is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And were both of these particular groups that we've discussed groups that tended to skew toward not being in favor of remote learning? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. And what were these Facebook groups, as you understood it? Fragomeni. I understood that the Facebook posts were extensions of what we were hearing when parents were reaching out or using the Talk to Us button, which I pay close attention to. Gordon. And do you track the numbers of Talk to Us communications you get from parents? Fragomeni. Correct, we do. Gordon. Do you create a report or does somebody create a report on that as to what information is coming in and how much information? Fragomeni. I don't recall. Gordon. Does the district create a report? Fragomeni. I do not recall. Gordon. So who discusses this Talk to Us information that comes in? How is that monitored or tracked? Fragomeni. The Talk to Us information that comes in is directly sent if it's specific about a child or a building to the building administrator to respond. Gordon. Okay, but does somebody track what's coming in over time or over months? Fragomeni. I don't recall. Gordon. Ms. Grain was apparently assigned to track and follow the closed Facebook group RCS Parents for In-Person Education. Who assigned her to do that? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, you knew that the Facebook group was being monitored by the district, correct? Fragomeni. I know that the district had members on that site. I do not know, Gordon. I didn't ask you that. That's not what I asked you. Fragomeni. Ask again then, please. Gordon. Yeah, Gordon. Could the court reporter please read the question back? Court reporter. Reporter read question. Well, you knew that the Facebook group was being monitored by the district, correct? Gordon. Go ahead. Fragomeni. Yes, Gordon. Okay, and who assigned somebody to monitor the district as you understood it? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. The Facebook, well, was it you? Fragomeni. No, it was not me. Gordon. Who was it? Dr. Shaner? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, Ms. Grain reports up to you and Dr. Shaner, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. So it would have been one of you two that assigned her to start monitoring this Facebook group, correct? Fragomeni. I do not know. It was not me. Gordon. Well, who would know? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, how is it that hundreds of Facebook posts ended up being compiled by people that report to you and circulated to the board? How did that happen? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, you've seen the compilation because it's been presented to the board, correct? Fragomeni. No. Gordon. No what? Fragomeni. No, I have not seen the compilation of those emails. Gordon. When's the last time you would have looked at these compilations? Fragomeni. I did not look at those compilations. Gordon. Okay, well, I have. Court reporter. I'm sorry, I think Ms. Nichols is speaking. Nichols. I was trying to put an objection on the record. I think it's tricky on Zoom. So, Debbie Fragomeni, not Gordon, if you can just give me 1 second if it looks like I'm going to start talking or if you hear me talk so that I can get the objection. Otherwise it mutes me if somebody else is talking. Alright, we can go ahead. Gordon. Alright, Ms. Fragomeni, I have an email here from Lori Grain to you and Kristen Bull dated the 11th of January 2021, subject, accusation and assumptions, attachments, protesters, DOCX. Importance, hi. It's signed by Lori Grain and it says, Amy has done an amazing job documenting information. This was posted on the Parents for In-Person Learning Facebook page. Attached is the discussion that began about this evening's board meeting but turned into a conversation with accusations and assumptions that the board is contacting employers. Redacted proposes calling Cranes, CRAINS. Respectfully, Lori. And attached to that communication of January 11th is 160 pages of Facebook posts of parents on a closed Facebook site. So you received this. Why are you telling me you don't know about this? Fragomeni. I do not. Nichols. Objection. Fragomeni. Review 160 pages of Facebook posts from an internal Facebook concerned parent group. Gordon. I didn't ask you that. I never asked you whether you reviewed 160 pages. I said you were aware that this Facebook group was being monitored by Lori Grain or somebody else, and that information was being compiled. And you denied knowing that. I have an email directly to you or you're CC'd telling you what I just read into the record. So obviously you knew that Ms. Grain thought Amy had done an amazing job of documenting information posted on the Parents for In-Person Learning Facebook page. Nichols. I'm going to, objection. Gordon. Does that refresh your recollection? Nichols. Objection to foundation of that question. Gordon. Are you coaching, Courtney? Nichols. I literally just said I'm objecting to the foundation of the question. That was it. Gordon. Okay. It wasn't very loud so I don't know how you can object to the foundation. This is an email. Let's put it up. Gordon. Do you remember the email? Nichols. My objection to the foundation relates to your characterization of her prior testimony, to be clear for the record. But she can, if you want to put the email up, she can certainly answer any questions you have. Gordon. Ms. Fragomeni, do you remember the email? Fragomeni. I do not recall the email. Gordon. Did you look at this email prior to this deposition? Fragomeni. I did not look at any email or this email prior to today. Gordon. When's the last time you would have laid eyes on this document? Was it when you received it in January 2011? I'm sorry, 2021? Fragomeni. I do not recall seeing that email. Gordon. Okay, well, we're going to put it up on the screen now. No, I'm sorry, we've got to share it. Give us a second. Okay, here we go. Take a look at this. You can see your name on the email. See that under CC? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and this is from Lori Grain, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And it's dated the 11th of January 2021 at 5:39 p.m., correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and it's also to Kristen Bull, the president of the Board of Education, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and the subject is FB, which I take to mean Facebook, accusation and assumptions. What does that mean in that context as you read this email? Fragomeni. I do not recall. Gordon. Okay, and then the attachment is called protesters, DOCX. Who are the protesters, as you understand it? Fragomeni. I did not know who the protesters were going to be. We knew that there were going to be people that were going to be coming to the meeting that evening. Gordon. Why are they called protesters, Fragomeni? I do not know. Gordon. Instead of parents? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Or interested parents. You do not know? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Did you write Ms. Grain back and say, you know, we really shouldn't be calling parents that just have an opinion about their children's education protesters? Did you write her back and say, you know, this isn't probably the best way to characterize this? Fragomeni. I believe what I do recall from the protesters who had been out before and alerting us that they would be coming called themselves protesters. Gordon. Well, that may or may not be, but you are the people that run the district on the taxpayers' dime. Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And these people are paying for the entirety of the educational system, including your salary, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and you need to be respectful of their points of view, do you not? Fragomeni. I absolutely do. Gordon. But you didn't like the fact that there were certain parents that disagreed with your position and that of the district that all learning should be remote, correct? Fragomeni. Incorrect. Gordon. Okay, well, we'll get to that. We'll see what you did about that. But in any event, you're calling these people protesters. The district is. And that was fine with you, you were happy to call them protesters, correct? Or at least have your direct report call them protesters, correct? Fragomeni. Incorrect. Court reporter. I can't hear the objection. Nichols. Form and foundation. Gordon. Okay, all right. Let's continue in the email from Lori Grain. Amy, and who is Amy? Amy has done an amazing job documenting information. Who is Amy? Fragomeni. Amy Decrease. Gordon. Okay, and Amy is also in your chain of command, right? Fragomeni. She is supervised by Lori Grain. Gordon. Yeah, who reports up to you, and we've already said she's in your chain of command, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. All right. So you've got somebody in your chain of command who you see on this date that Amy has done a, quote, amazing job documenting information. So I'll stop right there. The information from the attachment, which I'm happy to put up for you in a minute, all the information that Amy documented was information from a Facebook page from a group of parents who disagreed with remote learning. Are you aware of that? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. Okay. Did you ever know who assigned Amy the job responsibility of documenting all of these Facebook posts that cover 160 pages of material that I now have? Who would have assigned her to spend her time doing that? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, who would I ask to find that out? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Okay, and so at the time you got this email you must have already been aware that Amy had been assigned this job, right? Fragomeni. I know that Amy was a part of several Facebook groups in our community. Gordon. That's not what I asked you. I asked you a very different question. When you got this email you realized Amy had been assigned to document Facebook posts that were opposed to remote learning. You looked at this piece of paper, and if you didn't already know before, which I assume you did if you are good at your job and follow what's happening. But even if you weren't good at your job and weren't following this, you learned on January 11, 2021, that Amy had been busy documenting 160 pages of Facebook material. You learned that on that date, correct? Fragomeni. I don't recall. Gordon. Well, it's up in front of you, Fragomeni. I see it. Gordon. Ms. Fragomeni. Okay. You don't deny learning on or before January 11 that Amy had been assigned to document what turned out to be 160 pages of parent discussion on a Facebook page by what you call protesters? Fragomeni. I didn't call them protesters. Gordon. Well, your subordinate called them protesters. Fragomeni. Well, I will say again I did not have the information that there are 160 pages. I know that Amy D. Crease was monitoring the district feedback from several Facebooks, people's comments. Gordon. Were parents told, hey, you people on RSC, sick, parents and concerned parents, I'm paraphrasing the names. Did anybody tell them, hey, we're documenting everything you do and we're compiling it and then we're going to have our lawyer send out cease and desist letters? Were the parents alerted that that was what you were doing? Court reporter. I'm sorry, I can't tell if Ms. Nichols spoke or not. Nichols. I did. I object to form and foundation. Gordon. Courtney, we really are not hearing you. Nichols. Yeah, I don't know, Gordon. I can't hear you either. Nichols. I don't know if it's my computer or not. Gordon. Okay, it's up to you. That's fine. Nichols. Wait, I'm talking. Can you hear me now? Gordon. Yes, now we can hear you. Nichols. All right. If there's an issue with my computer let me know, because I don't know it unless somebody alerts me to it. So I'll object to the form and foundation of that question. Gordon. Okay. Do you remember the question, Ms. Fragomeni? Fragomeni. Yes, I do. Gordon. Okay. Did anybody tell the parents that they were being tracked, monitored and cease and desist letters were going to be sent? Nichols. Same objection. Gordon. That you were copied on? Were the parents advised of this? Nichols. Same objection. Gordon. Go ahead. Fragomeni. I thought that Courtney objected. Gordon. No, we take an answer over the objection. Over her objection. It's for the record. Go ahead. Are you unable to answer my question? Fragomeni. I am unable to answer your question. Gordon. The answer is no, parents were not told that what they thought was a closed Facebook page, they were not told that the government was monitoring their communications and compiling a dossier and that there were going to be cease and desist letters potentially sent out. Parents were never advised of that by you or your communications team, were they? Nichols. I'm going to object to form and foundation, and to the extent it's argumentative. Gordon. Go ahead. Parents were never told that, right? Fragomeni. I have no comment. Gordon. You have to have a comment. You are under oath in a federal court proceeding. You can't not comment. Nichols. I'm going to object to the form and the foundation. You haven't established that she would have the capacity to testify as to what parents were or were not told. Gordon. I didn't. Nichols. In regards to, Gordon. I didn't ask what parents knew. Nichols. You keep telling her she has to answer. She said she can't answer. Gordon. No, she didn't say, listen, there's no such thing as saying that in a Dep, Courtney. She's on the email. She's in charge of the people who communicate with the community. I'm not going to argue, I'm not going to have to convince you. If Ms. Fragomeni is actually saying to me today, no comment, as to my question that you never told parents or the community that they were being monitored and tracked in what they believed was a closed Facebook group, your answer will, I guess, just stand on the record, you can't answer that. Gordon. Is that your answer? Nichols. Let me just confirm that subject to my objection you can answer. Do you understand what the question is? If you don't you understand you can ask for it to be repeated. Fragomeni. Please repeat the question. Gordon. Yes. I have asked now 3 times whether the community and parents were advised that the school district, the government, was tracking people's Facebook posts in a closed group, that the posts were being documented and copied and then that cease and desist letters were sent to some of the posters that you call protesters. My question is, were the parents advised, were the community members of the Rochester School District advised that their communications were being tracked? Fragomeni. Not to my knowledge, however, my understanding from that situation was that Amy D. Crease, who was on several of these Facebook posts, parents knew that she was on that post. Gordon. Well, it's one thing to be on a post, it's quite another to spend taxpayer time copying these things and then circulating them to the board. Those are two different things, aren't they? Fragomeni. Again, what parents were notified that were on these different? Gordon. You've gotta answer my, Fragomeni. I don't have knowledge of. Gordon. You've gotta answer my question. Being a member of a group means you may once a week or once a month or once a day check in and see what people are talking about on your own personal time. But when you are documenting information and compiling it, that takes taxpayer-paid time, doesn't it? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And let's go down on the same email. It says, attached is the discussion that began about this evening's board meeting, but turned into a conversation with accusations and assumptions that the board is contacting employers. Redacted proposes calling Cranes. What is that referencing, those last two sentences? Fragomeni. The last sentence is a parent who was going to call Kristen Bull's employer. Gordon. Why? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. This didn't perk your ears up about what in the world is happening. Somebody is calling a major publication in this area, in our geographic area? Why would Redacted be calling Cranes? For what purpose? Fragomeni. Kristen Bull is an employee there. Gordon. Okay, so I'm going to ask my question again. Why would somebody be calling Cranes? Nichols. Object to foundation. Gordon. Go ahead. What was your understanding? Fragomeni. I didn't give it any understanding more than reaching out to Kristen Bull's employer. Gordon. Okay, who is Redacted? Fragomeni. She's a parent in our district. She has 3 sons in the district. Gordon. And why is she named in this email? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, you know her, don't you? Fragomeni. I know who she is, yes. She was a parent in my building when I was at Hugger Elementary. I know her from being a parent. Gordon. And what is her connection to Cranes? Fragomeni. I don't know. I don't believe any, to my knowledge. Gordon. And what is Kristen Bull's connection to Cranes? Fragomeni. She's an employee there. Gordon. Well, what was the goal here in this email of calling Cranes? What would be the ultimate goal? I mean, you're a very high-level person and getting this email. What did you understand was occurring here? What was to be done? Fragomeni. Well, if I recall, Ms. Redacted also stated in several board meetings it would be on the record that she was going to be contacting everyone's employer on the Board of Education. Gordon. About what? Fragomeni. So that was my understanding. Gordon. About what? Fragomeni. About each of the board members. Gordon. Give me an example. Fragomeni. I don't have an example more than she was going to contact them. She was very dissatisfied with the leadership of the Board of Education. Gordon. Okay, so Ms. Redacted was dissatisfied with how the board was handling the remote learning issue, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And she was going to call the employers of who? Fragomeni. The Board of Education members. Gordon. Did that occur? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. And so this information that was going to be calling Cranes came up with this Facebook group, is that correct? Fragomeni. I do not know where it came from. Gordon. Well, it's obviously from a post because you can see that by reading that last paragraph. Fragomeni. Again, in the minutes of the Board of Education meeting, if you listen to Ms. Redacted, she would have articulated the same message. Gordon. This is before the meeting, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And let's just scroll down. Are these attached? I'm not going to go over all of these with you obviously, because I think there are literally 160 pages that you received from Lori Grain, so we'll just give you a couple of samples here. So this is Defendants Bates 184. So let's just scroll through a little bit. Yeah, just keep going. So now I'm on 185, 186, 187. And just for the record, what these pages are showing are post after post after post by parents commenting on the situation vis-a-vis remote learning. You see all that, Ms. Fragomeni, is that correct? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. And you would have received these all on January 11, 2021, correct? Fragomeni. Incorrect. Gordon. Well, Ms. Fragomeni, they are attached to the email literally that I just told you that you received. Fragomeni. I did not read these documents. Gordon. I didn't ask you that. I said you received them, correct? Fragomeni. If I received them I did not read those. Gordon. Why not? Fragomeni. Because I get those every day in different forms and I referred to those. I did not go through 160 pages, Gordon. Okay. Fragomeni. Of this information. Gordon. All right. So let me understand this. So on a regular basis Grain or somebody else was sending you whatever was posted on these Facebook pages sort of day by day, is that it? Fragomeni. Absolutely not. Gordon. Well, you said you'd seen them previously. Fragomeni. No, you asked me if this was attached and it was attached to that document, and I did not go through and read these. I do not spend my time reading Facebook posts from parents. Gordon. So then this was a waste of taxpayer money for Ms. Grain to spend, or, I'm sorry, for Amy to have spent all this time compiling this and sending this to you and Kristen Bull, and you never even read it. Why didn't somebody tell her stop doing this, we don't want this? Are you reading something right now? Fragomeni. Me? Gordon. Yeah, Fragomeni. No, I thought Courtney was objecting and I was being respectful to her. Nichols. Objection for the record, form and foundation. So, Debbie, you can answer. Fragomeni. Thank you. Can you ask the question again, please? Gordon. Can the court reporter please read back the question? Thank you, Tricia. Court reporter. Reporter read question. So then this was a waste of taxpayer money for Ms. Grain to spend, or, I'm sorry, for Amy to have spent all this time compiling this and sending this to you and Kristen Bull, and you never even read it. Why didn't somebody tell her stop doing this, we don't want this? Fragomeni. I did not read those posts. Gordon. I heard that a couple minutes ago. Fragomeni. I understand. Gordon. Nor did you tell anybody in that office, hey, this is not a good use of taxpayer time, we don't want you compiling these, I'm not reading them. You never did that, did you? Fragomeni. I did not do that. Gordon. Okay. And you became aware that Elena Denverno was an active participant with regard to these Facebook groups one or more of these Facebook groups we've been talking about, correct? Fragomeni. No, that is incorrect. I did not know of her involvement in any of these until this particular post came forward to me. Gordon. Which particular post? Fragomeni. A post that was soliciting children who are in crisis to take video. For parents to take videos of them. Gordon. And how did you become aware of them? Fragomeni. I became aware of that with a post, or, I'm sorry, with a communication that I received on November 5th. Gordon. And who did you receive it from? Fragomeni. Amy Decrease. Gordon. And what did you understand was occurring that caught your attention? Fragomeni. Well, this certainly caught my attention because the climate and the emotional wellness of our community and our students was of concern. So reading a post where a parent was soliciting for children who are struggling to make a video was alarming to me. Gordon. Really? You thought you knew better than the parents of the very children who were going to be interviewed or do a video? You thought you knew better than these students' parents? Fragomeni. I certainly don't take a role of any parent. Every parent has the right to do whatever they want to do and I have a responsibility. Gordon. That's correct. Court reporter. Excuse me, I can't hear Courtney's objection. Nichols. I'll try to get closer. My objection is to the form of that and I just ask that the witness be allowed to finish her full answer before she's interrupted. Gordon. Maybe you should stay unmuted because I think you're starting to get out your objection and you're still muted. Nichols. It's not. I don't have an audio issue. Let's get through this line of questioning and if we can take a quick break I'll call in with my headphone. Gordon. Tricia, would you please read back the last question or the last answer, whichever it was? Court reporter. Reporter read from page 54, line 16 through 22. Gordon. Really? You thought you knew better than the parents of the very children who were going to be interviewed or do a video? You thought you knew better than these students' parents? Fragomeni. I certainly don't take a role of any parent. Every parent has the right to do whatever they want to do and I have a responsibility. Gordon. Okay. So why were you then monitoring whether these parents of students should allow their students to participate in a video expressing their thoughts and feelings? Why were you doing that? Fragomeni. Can you clarify the question you're asking to why I would be doing that? Gordon. Yeah, I've got an email here, and you've just gotten done telling me that you became aware of my client because she was suggesting getting statements from parents and/or students about their reaction to remote learning. And I'm asking you why you took the position that this was something improper that my client should not be doing? Court reporter: I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the objection. Nichols: I'm objecting to the foundation of that question. Deb: if we can take a break, Gordon. No, I don't want to take a break. I'll just deal with I think. I personally think you're remaining on mute and hence we're not hearing you. The minute you unmute we hear you very clearly. Nichols: okay, I'm just trying to make sure that we don't get audio feedback with this setup in my office. Gordon: I should have asked this to begin with. Ms. Fragomeni, where are you physically located? Fragomeni: I'm located in my home. Gordon: okay. And, Courtney, where are you? Nichols: you can see I'm in my office in Bloomfield Hills. Gordon: I can't tell whether people are in their home or their office. Nichols: yeah. Gordon: so you guys are in different locations. What's the feedback problem? Nichols: it's my office setup. My audio is really glitchy here, which is why I said if I call in with my headphones it should. Savage: Courtney: I think the problem is when you unmute there's a small lag. Gordon: yeah. Savage: and you talk pretty fast and so your objection, Gordon, of course. Savage: is in the lapse. Gordon: that's very obvious that's what's happening. It's just that you're on mute when you start talking. There's a lapse, so unmute, wait a second and then start talking. Nichols: thank you. Gordon: all right. Or stay unmuted. That's even better. Nichols: if you go back, my objection was to foundation of the question. If you want to just, Gordon, I heard you. Nichols: repeat the question she can answer. Gordon: okay, go ahead, Ms. Fragomeni. Fragomeni: please re-ask the question. Gordon: why would, Fragomeni, I'm not sure where we're at. Gordon: I'm going to change and again, this is part of the problem, Courtney, with your delayed objection. We have to stop everything, so just, let's see if we can avoid that. Yeah, I mean, why are you taking a position on what Elena Dinverno should be doing or not doing with regard to talking to or interviewing students and parents about their reactions? Why is that any business of yours? Fragomeni: it isn't any business of mine. A parent has a right to however they choose to raise their children or expose their children to that is not my decision. My responsibility is to the safety and the well-being of our organization. I'm aware of several children who were in crisis at the time, as well as the well-being of all of our stakeholders. Gordon: well, what does that have, all right. What does that have to do with you taking a position about my client interviewing parents and students? Fragomeni: I didn't take a position. I don't even know who this woman is. I didn't take a position. I took the information in terms of my role and responsibility in the district for the well-being of our students and our staff. Gordon: you thought the well-being of your students would not be well served by Elena Dinverno encouraging people to make statements on a tape? You thought that was going to be harmful to the student community? Fragomeni: I have no control how parents behave. Gordon: I didn't ask you that. That was not my question. Fragomeni: that's exactly what my answer is. Whatever her decision would not be anything I have control over. Gordon: I didn't ask you that. Tricia: I'm really sorry. Can you please read back my question? Listen to this, Ms. Fragomeni, and save us all some time. Court reporter. Reporter read last question. You thought the well-being of your students would not be well served by Elena Dinverno encouraging people to make statements on a tape? You thought that was going to be harmful to the student community? Gordon: that's my question. Is that what you thought? Fragomeni: yes. Gordon: okay, you said you knew many children in crisis or knew of them. What were they in crisis about? Fragomeni: I used the word, Gordon, remote learning? Remote learning? Fragomeni: a variety of different issues. Gordon: well, was remote learning one them, that they were not in the school building with their Fragomeni? It could be a result of that. Correct, but not exclusive to that. Gordon: so, pardon me. I have an email chain between you and Lori Grain, and at some point Kristen Bull is brought into this. so you send an email to Shaner and Bull on November 5, 2020 at 9:25 p.m. Forward, children in distress. And what you're sending is a message from Lori Grain saying, "Please see Amy's message below." How horrifying for these children. And then the message below says, "Once again they are calling for videos of kids in distress. I know parents are giving permission for this, but can't we supersede in protecting these poor kids?" Elena Louise is the Facebook profile name. Her real name is Elena Dinverno, president of Redacted, Savage, parent. Gordon. Parent of Redacted at SCHS and Redacted at Heart. And then you. And then Lori Grain puts in Elena's email address and 2 phone numbers for her. And then she says she's the marketing director at Blake's Hard Cider. Do you recall getting that? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. Okay. Do you recall sending that email up to Kristen Bull, the president of the board, and your boss, Robert Shaner? Fragomeni. I do not recall sending it, but if you have it I would have, then. Gordon. Okay. So you sent to Kristen. You sent to Ms. Bull and to Dr. Shaner Elena Dinverno's name and all of her contact information and her employer, right? You forwarded that? Fragomeni. If that's on there, correct. Gordon. It is. And why is it, as you understood it, that Lori Grain thought this was, quote, horrifying for these children? What was that about? Fragomeni. I do not know why Lori, Gordon. It wasn't horrifying for the children, it was horrifying potentially from a political point of view for the board. That was the horrifying part, wasn't it, that children and parents were going to actually speak out about how this wasn't working? Isn't that what you guys were really concerned about? Nichols. I'm going to object to the form and foundation. Gordon. Isn't that what you were really concerned about? It was horrifying for you and the board, that was horrifying if videos were made? That's what you were really worried about, wasn't it? Fragomeni. That's incorrect. Gordon. Okay, well, did you have any parents call you and say, or contact you, "Oh, my God, my child is being asked to give a video, I'm so upset"? Did anybody call and tell you that? Fragomeni. No, they did not. Gordon. Okay, in fact, you knew the parents were giving permission. You were told that by Lori Grain, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, but yet your report, Lori Grain, wanted the district to supersede the parents' decisions, correct? Fragomeni. That's incorrect. Gordon. That's what it says here. I know parents are giving permission for this, but can't we supersede in protecting these poor kids? That's in an email to you, Ms. Fragomeni. Fragomeni. Thank you. But that's not my comment. Gordon. Well, it's your direct subordinate's comment, and you did not write back to her and say, "No, we can't supersede, we're the government." You didn't write that back to her, did you? Fragomeni. No, I did not. Gordon. Okay, and you agreed with her. You thought there should be a way for the district to supersede and make the decision for these families' children. You wanted to make the decision, not the parents, correct? Fragomeni. Incorrect. Gordon. Well, that's what Grain thought. You disagreed? Fragomeni. That was incorrect. It was incorrect. Gordon. Okay, and you forwarded that on, then, to Bull for what reason? Fragomeni. I forward emails on in circumstances where there's a parent and a phone number. Usually we follow up with a family member who has asked for a request from conversation with the Board of Ed or with myself or Dr. Shaner. Gordon. But this parent wasn't seeking to hear back from you. Somebody sought out, Ms. Grain sought out my client's contact info and her employer. Ms. Dinverno was not looking to have a response from you, correct? Fragomeni. Correct, not to my knowledge. Gordon. But you sent on all of her information, including who her employer was to Kristen Bull. Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. You took it upon yourself to do that? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And then Ms. Bull wrote, "Please keep me posted on this one. I am producing a large event for Cranes in 2 weeks and Blake's as a sponsor." This is after your subordinate has told everybody that Elena Dinverno works for Blake's. I am producing a large event for Cranes in 2 weeks and Blake's as a sponsor. Elena has been my contact on the project. Do you remember getting that information back? Fragomeni. I don't recall that, but if it's documented I'm sure I did. Gordon. And then you responded, "Good evening, Kristen. We will keep you updated on this matter. Take care, Debbie." Do you recall that? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. That's Bates stamp 937, for the record, and 938. And then on that same date as this email string that I just read, starting with Grain sending to you my client's information, and then you sending it on, that very day you called Marty Blake, correct? Fragomeni. Incorrect. Gordon. Who did you call? Fragomeni. I contacted Andrea and asked if her mother would call me or if I could call her the following day. Gordon. Okay, and what did Andrea say? Fragomeni. She sent me her mom's email or her phone number because she was out of town. Gordon. And how did she send it to you? Fragomeni. In an email. Gordon. Okay, I'm going to ask that you produce that, alright? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And whatever email you sent to her. Fragomeni. Absolutely. Gordon. Okay, alright. And so you obtained the email of Sandra Blake and then you called her on November 5th, is that correct? Fragomeni. It would have been the next day, whatever day that was. Nichols. I want to make sure the question is clear. Deb, you said she obtained the email. Fragomeni. There was no email. I have no email, just a phone number. Nichols. Deb, I think you meant to ask if you obtained her phone number but you said email. I want to make sure the question and response is clear. Gordon. Okay, so you called, your testimony is you called Sandra Blake on the 6th, is that correct, of November? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. What time of day was that? Fragomeni. In the morning. Gordon. And why did you call her? Fragomeni. I called her because of our friendship. I didn't call her as a district employee. I called her as a colleague. The association with Blake's Hard Cider Company and their daughter, I wanted them to understand that this information may be coming forward. Gordon. I don't understand that last part. What information may be coming? What do you mean by, this information may be coming forward? Fragomeni. Thank you, I'm happy to clarify. I wanted them to know that there was a parent associated with their business that was seeking to provide videos of students in distress. Gordon. And that you were upset about that, correct? Fragomeni. I did not share my upset. I shared my friendship with people that I know and with a daughter who teaches in the district to have a heads up to what would be coming. Gordon. Well, what was going to be coming? What did you understand was going to be coming? Fragomeni. My understanding that this video was being taped and was going to be brought to the Board of Education and shared publicly. Gordon. Okay, and what would be wrong with that? Fragomeni. I have no decision on what would be wrong with that. I would want to give a friend of mine, whose business has never been part of any type of exploitation or political ramification, to be utilized or embarrassed by such actions, no matter how this was going to be utilized. Gordon. So any parent who has an employer, the employer gets called to tell the employer what the parent is doing at the school district level. Fragomeni. Absolutely not. I called as a friend, Gordon. I don't understand. I don't understand so your point here is your subordinate found out where Elena Dinverno worked, and then you decided to call her employer to tell her employer that she was creating a video that you thought was very distressing. What did her video have to do with her employer? Fragomeni. It had nothing to do with her employer. It was a friend and a colleague that I've had for many years and a family that I've known for many years that I wanted to give a heads up. And I wanted to make sure that their daughter was prepared if this video would go forward in whatever shape it would, that they would have that heads up to that information. Gordon. I'm sorry, you had already told the daughter, Andrea, about this. Fragomeni. No, I did not. Gordon. Well, you could have just told her on the phone, like you could have told all your teachers, heads up, there's some parents doing a video, but you didn't. You weren't really concerned about the daughter, you got the mother's number from the daughter. Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And then you called the mother, who's married to the owner of my client's employer. That's what you did, right? Fragomeni. Correct, but, Gordon. Okay. Fragomeni. I didn't, Gordon. Okay. And then you tell her that one of her husband's employees is doing something that you feel is wrong, correct? Fragomeni. Incorrect. Nichols. Objection. Gordon. Okay. And you talked to Marty Blake, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And you asked to talk to Marty Blake, correct? Fragomeni. No, I did not. Incorrect. Gordon. Okay, and what did you say to Marty Blake? Fragomeni. I explained to Marty what I said to Sandy. Gordon. And that was what? Fragomeni. I had become aware the night before that there was a parent group, including a parent who had listed Blake's as her employer, was creating a video of children in distress. And I wanted them to know that was the case, and I cared about their daughter, who's an employee in our district, and I wanted to give them a heads up. Gordon. What does this have to do with their daughter? Fragomeni. Their daughter is an employee in our district. The Blake name. Her last name is Blake. I wanted to make sure that my family friend could prepare their daughter if this was going to be coming forward, because it would not represent anything their family stands for. Gordon. What do you mean, Fragomeni? As a friend, that would be the truth. Gordon. Hang on a second. What do you mean it doesn't represent anything their family stands for? What is that referring to? Fragomeni. Blakes would not ever want children to be solicited under distress. Gordon. How do you know that? Fragomeni. That would be my strong understanding to how they live their lives. Gordon. Well, how do you know how they live their lives? You spend enough time with them to know how they live their lives? Fragomeni. In the 30 years I've known them, I've never known them to do anything to promote harm to other children from the community. Gordon. Did you get a professional opinion that by letting children speak their mind on video about how they're feeling this was detrimental to children? Fragomeni. No, I have not. Gordon. No, but you did believe it was detrimental to children, and you wanted the Blakes to know that one of their employees was going to engage in something that you believed was detrimental to children? That was the concept here, then? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and certainly Elena Dinverno had never, ever said with regard to any of the video being made the Blake's name was going to be on the video, correct? Fragomeni. Not to my understanding. Gordon. Okay. And I presume most parents who commented about remote learning or were involved in the video project, one or both of the parents were actually employed somewhere, correct? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, aren't most of your families, don't they have one or two parents employed? Fragomeni. They could. I do not know. Gordon. They could? Fragomeni. Because I do not follow the Facebook page to know who's working and who's not. Gordon. Well, in general, just from my understanding of how these things work, people who have children in school, one or two parents are employed somewhere or are working. Do you agree with me? Fragomeni. I would agree with that. During time of COVID, however, I would disagree if parents were working or not at that time. Gordon. Okay, well, they may have been working from home or they may have been on a leave, but they still were employed somewhere, most of them, correct? They weren't fired? Correct? Fragomeni. Not to my knowledge. Gordon. Okay, what else did you say to Marty Blake? Fragomeni. I did not say anything else to him. Gordon. Do you know whether any students or parents were actually interviewed for a video? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Do you know if any students were actually asked to, or parents were asked to give permission for students to appear in a video? Fragomeni. I do not know of any. Gordon. And at some point did you learn that Elena Dinverno had been made aware by Blakes that they had been contacted by somebody from the school district? Fragomeni. I had no knowledge of that at any time until I saw it on the news. Gordon. And you saw it on the news right around the time the lawsuit was filed, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And you knew at that time that you were the person who had called, obviously, correct? Fragomeni. I knew that I had called Sandy to make her aware of the situation. Gordon. Yeah, and you also knew you had literally talked to Marty Blake, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, and you knew that my client was told, we have this documented, and you can let me know if you need to see the documents. My client was told by Blake's HR department that they had been contacted by somebody from the Board of Education. You learned that, didn't you? Fragomeni. I learned that later. Gordon. When did you learn that? When did you learn that? Fragomeni. I've only learned that recently. Courtney Nichols. Just to be clear, she can't discuss what we discussed in an attorney-client privileged conversation. So if you learned it from counsel in the scope of this lawsuit, then that's what it's an off-limit discussion. Gordon. Okay, Well, Nichols. You can ask her if she learned it other than from conversation with counsel. Gordon. I get it. I get it. You learned that the following was submitted from the Board of Education website. This is on December 12, on or around December 12. Name, Elena Dinverno. Address, phone number, question, comment. It has come to my attention that certain board members are contacting parents' places of work to notify them that their behavior on the social channels they participate in is undesirable. May I remind you that we pay for your salaries with our tax dollars, and that what you are doing is against the laws of the BOE. Every parent has the right to express sadness, frustration, anger as a right of free speech. And then she continues. Now, you've already said that you received communications from parents from this particular portal, correct? Fragomeni. I don't know if they were from that portal. I've received countless communications from parents with a variety of different concerns, worries or requests for care. Gordon. So here I have on or around December 12 a communication from Elena Dinverno stating that she has become aware that certain board members have contacted parents' places of work. So were you aware of this when this message came in? Fragomeni. I was not aware of this when this came in, and I am not a board member to be privy to how that communication was going out. Gordon. Well, the problem is that I have you being CC'd on December 12 on receiving a copy of this. You were specifically, Fragomeni. Well, Gordon, hang on a second. You were CC'd. By the way, what's board at rochester.k12.mich.us? What's that email? Fragomeni. That's a direct communication to our Board of Education members. Gordon. Okay, so I have on December 12, you are CC'd on what I just read to you. Fragomeni. Aha. Gordon. Elena Dinverno saying, wait a minute, people's employers are being called. You get this on December 12. You know you, in fact, talked to an employer. Now you get this and Kristen Bull says, let's talk about this when you have a second. So why do you not speak up at that point and tell Shaner, Bull, or whoever else, hey, I'm the one that called? Fragomeni. At that time, and as I shared today, I did not call as a representative of my role or responsibility. I called a friend to give their family business a heads up and to ensure that their daughter, who's an employee in our district, would be prepared if their name would ever come forward with such a video. Gordon. Well, why didn't you then tell Bull and Shaner, listen, I'm the one that called, but I called as a friend? You didn't do that either, did you? Fragomeni. No, I did not. Gordon. You just stayed silent, correct? Fragomeni. I chose to put my professional relationship aside from my friendship with somebody. Gordon. Yeah. Fragomeni. That I've known. Gordon. So you left Shaner and Bull. At least from the document I have no idea what you actually said to them. But from the documents I have, they're getting a communication that they're concerned about from a parent saying people's employers are being called, and you just remain utterly silent and provide no insight, right? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And then this continues. Because on the 18th now Elena Dinverno has formed the opinion that it was Kristen Bull that called Marty because of what she was told by Blakes. And she writes Kristen, and therein begins a back and forth between Elena and Kristen, because Elena thinks Kristen called. And you continue to remain silent, right? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Did you tell Bull, who is the president of your board, listen, you need to know something. I know you're being accused of calling Elena's employer, but I want to let you know I did it. You did not do that, did you? Fragomeni. No, I did not. Gordon. Why? You were just letting Kristen Bull take the, never mind. I'll withdraw the question. Who is redacted? Fragomeni. She's a district parent. Gordon. And what was her position on remote learning? Fragomeni. I have no indication as to what her specific feeling was on that. Gordon. Well, I have an email from Lori Grain to Kristen Bull and yourself dated January 11th. You haven't reviewed any of these emails before your Dep? Fragomeni. I have not. Gordon. Did you know about them? Fragomeni. I've known about emails. I did not know about the ones you're speaking to specifically. Gordon. Okay, so this one is from Grain to Bull and Fragomeni. Subject: Facebook discussion regarding an incident that took place in July 2020. Redacted appears to have other community members championing her cause on the RCS Parents for In-Person Education Facebook page, which is separate from the Parent Advocates page. And then there's an attachment. Why were you receiving this? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Who is redacted? Fragomeni. She's a parent. Gordon. Is she politically connected? Fragomeni. I have no idea. Gordon. Did you read the communication about redacted that was attached to the Lori Grain email to you of January 11, 2021, at 5:30 p.m., Bates stamp 1317? Fragomeni. I do not recall. Gordon. Do you assume that you did? Fragomeni. At that time of might before a board meeting I wouldn't have read it at that time, for sure. Gordon. Was there a board meeting on that Monday? Fragomeni. I believe so. Gordon. And did you think this might come up at the board meeting, or is that why it was being sent to you? Fragomeni. I have no idea. Again, we have many emails that are coming in and we have those brought to our administrators, or Lori Grain contacts the parent directly, or Dr. Shaner would contact them directly. Gordon. Okay, so this came to you on January 11th, and there's a board meeting on the 11th, and in this email that you have received police officers were sent to the home of Ms. Redacted. Do you recall that? Fragomeni. I do recall that. Gordon. Who sent the police officers there? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. And this email that's attached here also references the district attorney calling redacted. Do you recall that? Fragomeni. I'm not aware of that, no. Gordon. Or calling, do you recall that? Fragomeni. I do not recall that specific situation. I know that Lori Grain, I know Dr. Shaner both had conversations with redacted. I'm not sure about redact. But I know that there had been some phone conversations with them. I was not privy to it and I did not participate in calling or contacting them. Gordon. What were the phone conversations about? Fragomeni. I cannot speak to that. Gordon. Okay, Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Were you involved in the decision to call the police? Fragomeni. No, I was not. Gordon. And are you aware that redacted was contacted by the district attorney to warn her about her statements? Fragomeni. I was not aware of that, no. Gordon. Did Ms. Redacted make a statement that was false? Fragomeni. Not to my knowledge. Gordon. When is the first time you told somebody from the district that you were the person that called Blake's? Fragomeni. In January, when I spoke to Dr. Shaner. Gordon. Okay. January when? Fragomeni. I don't have the specific date, but it was early in January. Gordon. So what happened there? You finally told him in January. How did this come to pass? Fragomeni. The media was preparing to take Elena and have her case brought forward. Gordon. What are you referring to? I'm not tracking you there. The media was? Fragomeni. Clarify what you're wanting me to answer. Gordon. When did you finally tell anybody from the district that you were the one that called Blake's, and you said January 2021 and you, Fragomeni, correct? Gordon. Hang on. You mentioned something about the media. So what are you referring to there with regard to the media? Fragomeni. When I learned about Elena's bringing a court case forward, I let Dr. Shaner know when he was on his leave. Gordon. And how did you learn in January Elena was bringing a court case forward? Fragomeni. I was aware of it because it was on the news that it was coming forward, and I anticipated her bringing it forward that night at the board meeting. Gordon. Okay, and what did you say to Dr. Shaner? Fragomeni. My recollection was to let him know that I had reached out to Sandy as a friend, not as a role. I never thought past ever any repercussions for any parent, but to alert a family friend that their business was being added to a circumstance that could be exploiting children. Gordon. Okay, how is their business being added to a circumstance that could be exploiting children? Fragomeni. Well, that was yet to be determined. Gordon. You had no information that their business was being pulled into this. You've already said that, correct? Fragomeni. Well, I have no rec. I have no understanding that it wouldn't cause some harm to some families. Gordon. No, you keep saying that their business was being pulled into this. You had no information that Blake's had anything to do with what Elena Dinverno was doing or not doing vis-a-vis remote learning, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. However, I called when I saw that with their name on it to give them a heads up that this could be coming and to be prepared for that. Gordon. Okay. And why was this exploiting children, this video? What do you mean by that, exploiting children? Fragomeni. I think burying several children last year from suicide caused me alarm when I would see families making a decision to put their children with distress out on a video. That's my own personal feeling. Gordon. Did somebody put their child out on a video then that child then committed suicide? Fragomeni. No, Gordon. Okay, so what does this have to do with harming children? Fragomeni. I don't think we knew what would come from it, but we didn't want to not have. Gordon. Like I said, you didn't want the board didn't want to be called out by children, like, yeah, I'm sitting here at home and I'm very unhappy, I want to play sports. You didn't want that on a video. That's really what you were worried about, wasn't it? Fragomeni. I disagree. Nichols. Object to form and foundation. Fragomeni. I disagree. Gordon. Okay, alright. Nichols. Can we take a break now? It's been 2 hours. I need to use the restroom. Gordon. Sure. Nichols. Back in 5-10 minutes? Gordon. Sure, sounds good. Court reporter. Recess from 12:01 p.m. to 12:12 p.m. Gordon. So right in the same time period. Well, I'm sorry, you just got done telling me you told Dr. Shaner, I think you said around January 11th or 12th, that you were the person that called Blake's. Did you ever tell Kristen Bull that you were the person that called Blake's? Fragomeni. No, I was not. Gordon. Did you come to learn that she found out that you were the person? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Is she somebody you have a good relationship with? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. Do you text with her? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. Do you text with other board members? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. All of them? Fragomeni. I do when there is district business only, but primarily to the president and the vice president. Gordon. Okay. Fragomeni. Kevin Beers and Kristen Bull are the two that I alert. Gordon. Okay. Fragomeni. When there's district business underway. Gordon. How about Ms. Grain, do you text with her periodically? Fragomeni. Yes, I do. Gordon. Okay, so do you know how Kristen Bull ever learned that you were the person that had called Blake's? Fragomeni. Through Dr. Shaner. Gordon. Did she already know? I mean, had she already been in the loop on this that you were going to call? Fragomeni. That I was going to call? Gordon. Yeah. Fragomeni. Oh, prior to that? Gordon. Yes. Fragomeni. No. Gordon. On January 13th you received another communication from Lori Grain, along with Kristen Bull, the subject related to claims of employer calls. That's the subject line. And then it says, FYI, related to Elena Dinverno. And there's 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a couple of pages of communications on one of these Facebook groups where the community is saying, I'm reading, paraphrasing one from page 179 Bates. I'm so sad to hear of this in Elena's story today. It sounds like what they really want is the Facebook chatter to go away at all costs. It seems they are more concerned about their egos and what parents are saying about them. That's from Redacted, and then there's further communication with Redacted and so on. As you understood it, why were you being sent this from Ms. Grain on January 13th, related to Elena Dinverno, as she says? Fragomeni. I do not know specifically why she sent that, however, I would assume that she was keeping me apprised of the community's interactions with this incident. Gordon. With this issue of calling the employer? Fragomeni. With the allegation of that being so, yes. Gordon. Did you respond to Lori? Fragomeni. I don't recall. Gordon. Did you ask her to keep an eye out for anything that popped up on this topic of Blake's being contacted? Fragomeni. I did not. Gordon. So she just did this on her own? Fragomeni. I do not know where she determined to do this. Gordon. To advise you as to what was being said about Elena Dinverno's employer being contacted. Fragomeni. Lori Grain. Gordon. I assume you're aware that many parents in the district received cease and desist letters from the district, I think written by Mr. Chisholm, who's on this Dep today, who's here listening to the Dep. You were aware of that, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Nichols. I'm just going to object to the form. Gordon. And roughly how many such letters were sent? Fragomeni. I have no number to share. Gordon. You were, Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. You were CC'd on many of these letters, correct? Fragomeni. Yes. Nichols. Objection to form. Gordon. Whose decision was it from the district to send cease and desist letters to parents who were making comments about the board and what the board was doing? Whose decision was that? Nichols. Object to the form, Foundation. Gordon. Go ahead. Fragomeni. Dr. Shaner and counsel made those decisions. Gordon. Does the school district have in-house counsel? Fragomeni. No, they do not. Gordon. Do you know Mr. Chisholm? Fragomeni. Yes, I do. Gordon. How long have you known him? Fragomeni. I have known him for the last, probably through this tenure, 8-9 years. Gordon. And does he have a contract with the district? Fragomeni. Yes, he does. Gordon. And what is the contract? What does it call for? Fragomeni. I know he's offered assistance for my work directly with hearing officer appeals. That's my understanding of what he does. But he does represent our district as a whole. It's much more complex and I don't have that information. Gordon. But you sit in on the board meetings, right? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Do you go into executive session with the board? Fragomeni. If I'm invited to. Private sessions are for board members and for counsel. Only if I'm invited in. I'm not a board member. Gordon. So what have you worked with Mr. Chisholm on in the past for his 8 or 9 year tenure? Fragomeni. I have worked on with him, Nichols. Wait, hold on 1 second. I just want to make sure that we're not delving into attorney-client privilege. So if it's topics that's public knowledge, that's not a problem and we can list those. But you cannot get into the substance of any communications that you've had with Jeremy, okay? Fragomeni. Thank you. Gordon. Go ahead. Fragomeni. I was going to share our Title X work that we have done throughout our organization. We've had some personnel matters throughout our organization that he has provided counsel for, as well. Those are the types of, we've been assisting in problem-solving hearings for students and their families within my, Gordon, pardon? You mean disciplinary hearings? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. You use the word, officer. What did you mean by that? Fragomeni. I represent the district. One of my responsibilities is I'm the district's hearing officer, where students and their families come forward if the code of conduct has been violated and more than a 10-day suspension is required. Gordon. Is there anybody else from the Collins and Blaha firm that you work with other than Mr. Chisholm? Fragomeni. Gary Collins I've had conversations with, as well. Primarily as Dr. Shaner was on leave, I have had conversations with him just about district matters and district business. Gordon. I assume the board has voted on the Collins and Blaha contract, is that correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And how long is the contract? If you can explain the nature of your relationship, contractual relationship. Fragomeni. I cannot speak to that. I am not aware of that timeline. Gordon. And are they on an hourly fee basis or do they get some set amount of money? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Have you ever discussed with Dr. Shaner having cease and desist letters sent to parents? Fragomeni. He has shared that information with me. Gordon. What did he say? Fragomeni. That he was sending letters to parents in the community. Gordon. For what purpose was he? Did he tell you he was sending letters? Fragomeni. He was working with our local law enforcement at the time. Gordon. That doesn't answer my question. What was the purpose of sending the cease and desist letters? Fragomeni. I do not know. Gordon. Well, you sat in on a meeting about it. He must have said why he wanted to send cease and desist letters. Fragomeni. As I shared, he was guided with working closely with our local law enforcement. Gordon. So tell me who the local law enforcement is you're referring to so I can depose them. Fragomeni. Chief Steve Shettenhelm and Chief Bart Johnson. Gordon. You think they suggested cease and desist letters? Fragomeni. I believe that they had conversation about the direction that they were going to go as a district. I was not privy to those conversations. Gordon. What do you mean the direction they were going to go as a district? Fragomeni. To provide a cease and desist letter and work with the attorneys to do so. Gordon. What would the police have to do with telling people not to use speech? Fragomeni. I have no understanding of why that would have come forward. Gordon. You're telling, Fragomeni, I wasn't part of that conversation. Gordon. But you're connecting these cease and desist letters to Shaner working with local law enforcement. That's what you just said. Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, well, Fragomeni, because you asked me how I knew, and I know that that's where he was working from. Gordon. Well, do you have any reason to believe local law enforcement is enforcing people's speech on Facebook or in letters? Fragomeni. I know that they are not enforcing people's free speech. Gordon. Well, Fragomeni, they were very clear with that guidance. Gordon. Well, what does law enforcement have to do with cease and desist letters telling people to stop posting things? Nichols. Object to form and foundation. Object to form and foundation. Gordon. What would law enforcement possibly have to do with a cease and desist letter telling people what to say or not say? Fragomeni. I don't believe, Nichols, same objection. Object to form and foundation. Gordon. Go ahead. Fragomeni. I don't believe that. I believe that local law enforcement was a conversation that Dr. Shaner would have. Working with the attorneys would be the decision that would be the outcome of what was made for those cease and desist letters. Gordon. What was the goal of the cease and desist letters that you discussed with Dr. Shaner? Fragomeni. We did not discuss a goal. Gordon. So have you ever heard in your 30-some years of a public body like a school district sending a cease and desist letter to citizens who have the right to offer their opinion? Fragomeni. I have seen a variety of letters that have been sent under that context, not for language but for many different things. Gordon. Like, for conduct where people are threatening people? Fragomeni. Conduct harassing, threatening statements. Gordon. And you've seen that within the district? Fragomeni. I have seen that in our county. Gordon. Well, I'm not asking you about the county. I'm asking, Fragomeni, I appreciate it. You asked me where I saw it and that's where I'm sharing where I saw it. Gordon. Okay, so the county has sent out letters, cease and desist letters that you've seen, Oakland County? Fragomeni. I have spoken to other superintendents. I know that that is something that does take place. I know it's not exclusive to Rochester. Gordon. 1 second, please. Brief pause. Okay, I apologize, guys. Alrighty. Okay, I have a cease and desist letter signed by Jeremy Chisholm where you are CC'd, Ms. Fragomeni. It's dated January 14, 2021 and it's written to redacted. Who is redacted? Fragomeni. A district parent. Gordon. Okay, and what was the problem with him such that a cease and desist was issued? Fragomeni. I don't recall. Gordon. Well, were you involved in? I believe this would have been when Dr. Shaner was out on leave. Fragomeni. That would be correct. That would be correct. And specific to that particular situation with Mr. Redacted, I'd have to see the email to look at it to know which issue it was. Gordon. So. Fragomeni. That came forward. Gordon. Would you have been the person that would have directed that this letter be sent to Mr. Redacted? Fragomeni. I did not direct that letter to be submitted. I would be happy to look at it, but I did not send that or ask that it be sent. Gordon. Well, Dr. Shaner was out, so who would have the authority to direct the cease and desist letter be sent? Let's tick through the names. Would Dr. Shaner be, Fragomeni? It would be Dr. Shaner. It would be Dr. Shaner. Gordon. And if you were filling in for him, would you have the ability to direct that such a letter go out? Fragomeni. Correct. Correct. Gordon. Okay, Fragomeni. Dr. Shaner was still involved, understanding what was happening daily. Gordon. Even while he was on leave? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. So do you believe it was Dr. Shaner, then, that directed that this letter be sent out? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. Is that what you think happened? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. You were CC'd on it, not Dr. Shaner. Fragomeni. Okay, I'm not denying that. Gordon. And who would have provided the information to Collins and Blaha about redacted? Fragomeni. Our district would have done so through the communications that we had received. Dr. Shaner, our board president, as well. Gordon. So you believe Dr. Shaner and/or Kristen Bull sent information to Collins and Blaha about redacted? Fragomeni. I would believe that Dr. Shaner would have gotten that information forwarded or asked somebody to put that information forward. Gordon. Did you know redacted? Fragomeni. For Collins and Blaha to review. Pardon? Gordon. Did you know redacted? Fragomeni. I do not know him personally. I only have noted his presence at Board of Education meetings. Gordon. Did he say things at the Board of Education meetings that were inappropriate? Fragomeni. No comment. Gordon. I don't know what you mean by no comment. What does that mean? That you don't want to answer, or what does that mean? Fragomeni. Redacted shares what his feelings are with the district. It is our responsibility to listen to our parents' concerns. Gordon. Well, but I had a question, which was, did he say anything inappropriate at a meeting? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. What was that? Fragomeni. I can't quote it exactly, but I know insinuating that Dr. Shaner should get back to work after his son died immediately was not appropriate. Gordon. What else? Fragomeni. I do not recall. Gordon. And you read this cease and desist letter, I assume, that you're copied on? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Did you read it before it went out? Fragomeni. Yes, I would have, yes. Gordon. So this letter says, in part, your public false suggestion of a possible conflict of interest was made in the context of your ongoing displeasure with policy decisions made by the board. Did he make a false suggestion of a possible conflict of interest? Fragomeni. No. Gordon. The letter says, in that context, raising the issue of a potential conflict of interest, which is unfounded. Was the allegation of a conflict of interest unfounded? Nichols. I'm just going to object to the extent it calls for a legal conclusion. Gordon. No, it doesn't. It asks if something is unfounded, a statement was unfounded, that there was a conflict of interest. Is that unfounded, from what you knew? Fragomeni. I don't know. Gordon. And then the letter goes on to say, and publicly describing a board member's employment status as the basis of that potential conflict of interest appears to be an attempt to exert pressure on the member and on the board to alter its policy decisions in a direction you prefer. Is that illegal for a citizen to try to pressure the board to alter its policy decisions? Nichols. I'm just going to make the same objection. You're asking her for a legal conclusion, just so. Gordon. Fair enough. I did say, Nichols, rephrase if you want. Gordon. That's the parents' prerogative, isn't it, to tell the board they want the policy altered, isn't that true? Fragomeni. Correct. They're welcome to ask. Gordon. They sure are. And they're welcome to apply pressure to the board, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Were you concerned about sending this kind of a letter with your name on it as a CC to a member of the public who was exercising his right to free speech? Nichols. Object to the form and foundation. Gordon. Go ahead. Fragomeni. I was not concerned. Gordon. Are you concerned now? Fragomeni. I'm not concerned. Gordon. Then I have another letter, January 14, to Elena Denverno, signed by Jeremy Chisholm, and again, you're CC'd. Dear Ms. Denverno, our firm represents Rochester Community Schools. Recently we have been made aware of public statements by you that are false and are injurious to the board. We write to advise you to cease making public false statements about the board, board members and the district. So let me begin by asking you whether you believed there were false statements made by Elena Denverno that were the subject of this letter? Fragomeni. Yes, I do. Gordon. What are the statements that she made that were false? Fragomeni. Her accusation that board members or members of the administration were putting pressure on parents to make them not speak their truth. Gordon. Isn't that just her opinion? Fragomeni. It could be. Gordon. Yep. Now, another comment in this Denverno letter is Mr. Chisholm, and I guess you are all upset about the following. At the board meeting on January 11, 2021 you stated to the board, quote, you are reporting parents to their employers, close quote. Then Mr. Chisholm says, that statement is false, as the board is not, quote, reporting parents to their employers, close quote. So let's break that one down. Mr. Chisholm is calling out my client because she stated that the board is calling employers, and it was you that was calling an employer, correct? Fragomeni. Incorrect. I was calling a friend. Gordon. Okay. Who happened to, Fragomeni? Board members were not calling. Gordon. You know what, Fragomeni? I was calling a friend. Gordon. Well, the friend happened to be my client's employer. We've already covered this. Fragomeni. Let me be clear that I called a friend. I was not looking or seeking down the line anything for Ms. D'inverno. Gordon. Oh, okay. Fragomeni. I was looking at a friend, Gordon. Okay. Fragomeni. And their family's business. Gordon. Okay, so here we have a letter that you are CC'd on, and I assume you saw this, as well, before it went out, correct? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, so now you're seeing that your counsel is telling my client that she's a liar because she made the comment that you were reporting parents to their employers. Why didn't you just clear it all up and say, you know, she's mixed up, she doesn't know, it was really me? Why didn't you do that? So, yes, the district did call somebody, but it wasn't the board, it was the deputy superintendent. Why didn't you clear all this up? Nichols. Object to the foundation. Fragomeni. Because I was calling to notify a friend. I was not acting as the deputy superintendent. Gordon. So you let my client receive a letter from a law firm threatening her when she didn't make a mistake at all. She had been told by Blake's, yeah, we got a call from somebody from the Board of Ed. And you knew all along it was really you, and you let the cease and desist letter go out. When my client was called a liar because Blake's mixed up that you're not on the board, you're just a deputy superintendent. That's what we've got here. Nichols. Object to form and foundation. Gordon. You stood by and allowed my client to be called out, right? Nichols. Same objection. Same objection. Gordon. Right? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And then the next paragraph goes on and says, your continued promotion of this false idea would cause further harm to the board and the district. You're hereby advised to cease and desist all false statements about the district. And the district's prepared to preserve its legal rights. You were happy with that letter? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. Okay, now let's go to a March 2 letter also signed by Mr. Chisholm to Redacted. Who is Mr. Redacted? Fragomeni. A district parent. Gordon. What was your problem with him? Fragomeni. I have no problem with him. Gordon. Well, you read a letter and had it go out telling him to cease and desist. You had some problem with him, or I assume the letter wouldn't have gone out after you read it, correct? Nichols. Object to the form and foundation to the extent the question infers that she's the author of that letter. Gordon. No, I never said, we all know who the author was. I've said it was Mr. Chisholm. She read it. She read it before it went out. What was the problem with Mr. Redacted? I know Mr. Chisholm, you know, I highly doubt he's coming in and telling you I don't like what Mr. Redacted is saying, so I have to assume it came from you or Shaner. What's the problem with Mr. Redacted? Fragomeni. I have not, excuse me? Are you asking something else? Gordon. No, go ahead. Fragomeni. Okay. I did not request a cease and desist letter to Mr. Redacted. Gordon. I didn't ask you that. Did you have any problems with anything Mr. Redacted was doing or saying? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. What was your problem? Fragomeni. My problem was a worry. Gordon. What was that? Fragomeni. In concern for the safety and well-being of his children, of our district, and framing language that was not true, harming Dr. Shaner personally by attacking him. Gordon. Okay, what was your worry about children with Mr. Redacted? Fragomeni. His own. Gordon. His own children? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. What was your worry? What was the worry there? Fragomeni. Their well-being. Gordon. In what regard? Fragomeni. Sending them to school to stand up without wearing a mask when they're in second grade was my worry. Gordon. Did you contact the Michigan Department of Human Services or, Fragomeni? Yes, I did. Gordon. Some other, Fragomeni? Yes, we did. I did not, but we did, yes. Gordon. Somebody else did? Fragomeni. Correct. Gordon. And you made a complaint? Fragomeni. A complaint was made, yes. Gordon. Okay, and what was the complaint, as you understood it? Fragomeni. I do not know the specifics of the complaint. Our concern was the well-being of the child who was under duress in the school office. Gordon. How old was the child? Fragomeni. He's second grade, so he would be 8. Gordon. So what was the duress, as you understood it? Fragomeni. He was not wearing a mask. Nichols. Wait. If we're talking about something pertaining to a minor student, I don't think we can get into that on the record. Gordon. I think it's a little late for that in that you guys sent the cease, Nichols. No. Gordon. Hang on. You sent the cease and desist letter and now I'm being told that a public report was filed. Nichols. That's too different, Gordon. I'm not asking about the child, Courtney. I'm asking about, Nichols. Okay. Gordon. This witness's perception of why a mask or not wearing a mask. Leave aside that it's Mr. Redacted's child. I'll take Courtney's point. Leave that aside. Let's say a hypothetical child, a second grader. What is the duress that that child would have with regard to wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, as you understood it? Fragomeni. As I understood it, the child wanted to be in class. As I understood it, the child had a rubber band to mark every time he was asked to put it on to go back to class. As I understand it, when he talked to his mother, he was very upset at having to be in the office and wait for a pickup. As I understand it, the parent refused to pick him up. Gordon. Did you discuss this with the parents? Fragomeni. No, I did not. Gordon. Did anybody from the school district discuss this with the parents? Fragomeni. Absolutely. The building administrator and the assistant superintendent, Mr. Corey Heitch, had that conversation with him. Gordon. What was the school's mask policy at the time of the cease and desist letter, which is April of 2021? Fragomeni. Masks were mandated for our students and adults inside, per the Oakland County Health Department. Gordon. The Oakland County Health Department had a directive. Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. That masks must be worn? Fragomeni. Yes. Gordon. Is that still in effect or not? Fragomeni. I'm sorry? Gordon. Is that still in force today? Fragomeni. It is in force today, correct. Gordon. Is this a Rochester schools policy or a county policy? Fragomeni. It's a county policy at this time. Gordon. Okay, hang on 1 second please. Brief pause. How long did you talk to Marty Blake for on the call we've discussed previously in this deposition today? Fragomeni. Can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure. I only talked to him 1 time. Gordon. Sure. How long did that conversation last? Fragomeni. Less than a minute. I talked to Sandy. Sandy asked me to speak to Marty. Gordon. What did Marty say after you told him what you wanted to tell him? Fragomeni. He thanked me for the information. Gordon. And then you subsequently learned that Elena Dinverno was terminated? Fragomeni. I did not know that until January. Gordon. And how did you learn that? Fragomeni. Through the news. Gordon. What news? Fragomeni. The news media, television. Gordon. Did you realize our lawsuit was not filed until May? Fragomeni. It was announced on the news the night of our board meeting on January 11th. Gordon. That Elena Dinverno had been fired? Fragomeni. No, that there would be a lawsuit. Gordon. Okay. Did you do any follow-up to see whether your call had caused her to be fired, or did you already know by the time you got off the call she was going to be fired? Fragomeni. I never, Nichols. Object to form and foundation. Fragomeni. I never knew that she would be fired. That was never my expectation. My expectation was to reach out to Sandy as a friend to give her and their company a heads up that this could be coming. Gordon. What other employers did you contact? Fragomeni. I've not contacted any other employers. Gordon. How about other members of the district? They've contacted other employers. Fragomeni. Not that I can speak of, no. Gordon. You're not sure one way or another? Fragomeni. Correct. I know it isn't a practice of ours, by any means, to do so. Gordon. Are you continuing to send cease and desist letters? Fragomeni. Not to my knowledge. I'm not aware of any other cease and desist letters right now. Gordon. Okay, I don't have any others questions for you, and I appreciate your time today. Fragomeni. Thank you. Nichols. I have no questions. All set. Gordon. we're requesting your concurrence in amending the complaint to switch out the name of Ms. Bull with Ms. Fragomeni's name with regard to who contacted Blake's. Nichols. Okay, so you will, okay. So just so I'm clear, the claim will be the same. But when you say in terms of switching out, are you talking about substituting as a party defendant? Gordon. Yes. Nichols. Okay, Gordon. Well, we're going to leave Ms. Bull as a party defendant, but we're going to add Ms. Fragomeni. Nichols. Do you have a draft complaint that I could review? Gordon. No, we don't, but we will get one to you, but wanted to put it on your radar screen. Nichols. Okay, yeah, as soon as I see that I'll take a look and I'll get back to you. Gordon. All right. And then the one, Dr. Shaner's Dep, are we confirmed on that now or, court reporter, are we on the record still? Gordon. We can go off the record for this. Court reporter. Zoom video conference deposition concluded at 12:50 p.m.